In this episode of Amaz Talks, I'm going to talk about zero mana cards and argue that they should be just all removed from Hearthstone, and I don't like them in any card game at all. So let's go over the three main points in this video. So first of all, the power level of zero mana cards is always going to be super wacky, right? They are either super imbalanced or they are downright unplayable. So if we look at the zero mana spells that are mandatory in competitive decks right now, we have stuff like Backstab, you have Preparation. What makes them so strong is because they make it so that you can do more than what you're supposed to do in a given turn, right? Turn 1, you're only supposed to play 1 mana worth of cards, and turn 2, you're only supposed to play 2 mana worth of cards. But then if you have stuff like Innervate, you have stuff like Backstab, and even things that are not really zero mana but kind of are, like Patches the Pirate and you get a free 1/1, you know, that just pretty much, you know, breaks some of the turns. Now, these are all found in the basic set in Hearthstone, right? We can see that no expansion has ever introduced any new zero mana spells, and even if they do, they pretty much are really bad. Stuff like Freezing Potion and Snow Flipper Penguin, for example, like they're not found in competitive decks. But then, you know, if something like Hobgoblin ever comes back in the meta again, then all these zero mana 1/1s might actually just break the game, because zero mana cards inherently are not fair. Right? You can play it at any time, and the earlier you play them, especially if you combine them with another card that takes advantage of this, the better. You know, in Standard right now, we can still see a very big Edwin Van Cleef in turn 1 if the road goes, you know, counterfeit coins and preparations into like a big Edwin, and like you just can't deal with that and you just all lose. Garrison Auctioneer also comes to mind, where you can weave in preparation and then Fan of Knives and then just draw a million cards. And that is not very interesting to deal with, because that leads to our second point, is that zero mana cards do not give interesting decisions at all. When you have a zero mana spell in your hand, the choice is to either play it or you do not play it, right? Whereas every other card in Hearthstone that has a mana cost, there is an opportunity cost. Because if you play, for example, your opponent plays like a 2-drop and you're playing Druid, right? You can either Wild Growth for turn 2, or you can play Wrath. You can't play both. So then, you know, there's an interesting decision. Oh, you know, if I ramp up now, then maybe the board is gonna get, you know, out of hand really quickly. But if I Wrath this right now, then maybe I can stall the aggro deck and, you know, save some life for me to actually play a late game. But if you're playing Rogue, and you have a Backstab, you just play it. It's just, oh yeah, let's just remove that, you know, 3/2, and go on with whatever I was gonna do in turn 2 anyways. So it's something that your opponent can never play around, right? I remember old Soulfire back when I was playing against Zoo. I would just, you know, play Priest and just play my 1-drop, play my 2-drop, and just cross my fingers that they don't have Soulfire, because if they do, well, that's too bad. This was also very prevalent back when Handlock played zero mana Soulfire. They would play Twilight Drake and they would play Soulfire, and that was a turn that was just so much tempo that there's a lot of decks that can't beat that start, right? Which also brings up the point that zero mana cards have very limited design space, and it's also very uninteresting, right? We have what? We have gain mana, we have deal damage, we have stuff like Circle of Healing and Totemic Might, which are basically very weird. But the point is, you can't make a lot of zero mana cards. There's just not enough ideas to do it, because you have to balance around every single card that can work with casting more spells, and you also need to balance them in the early game, and that is just impossible. So my question is, why do these cards exist in the first place, right? So my third point actually looks at the history of zero-cost cards, and we'll start with Hearthstone first. Most of the zero mana cost cards got nerfed in some form or fashion, right? We've got Soulfire that was nerfed. We've got Hunter's Mark that was nerfed. The old Charge was bumped up into like 3 mana and then 1 mana. It was changed all over the place. And then we have the new Innervate, and Inner Rage to some extent, right, was also was also kind of scary because of the Grim Patron deck. We also have stuff that are secretly 0 mana, but not quite 0 mana. So you have, Patches the Pirate, Dread Corsair, you have Molten Giant, and, these have a little bit more interesting decisions around them because you can't play them, just mindlessly. You have to kind of set them up. But still, they enable stuff that shouldn't really happen. And yeah, Molten Giant got nerfed because, it was really bad to play against a handlock that would just go under 10 health, play Molten Giant Shadow Flame, or Molten Giant taunt them up, and then you would just basically lose out of nowhere, and it was just basically not intuitive, right? Some other examples of cards that might be 0 mana, or make other things that are 0 mana would be stuff like the old Mech Warper deck, right? Mech Mage used to have some explosive starts that they have double Mech Warper, and you just couldn't win at that position. There's also Sorcerer's Apprentice, and based on the history of these very, very broken 0 mana cards, Blizzard has toned them down by quite a notch, with the most recent Fire Plume Harbinger being a 0 mana cost card, possibly a cost reduction that is actually very, very weak. And if we look at other card games as well, they also started with a lot of 0 mana cards in their base sets, and they gradually got either banned out or rotated out, or just like not allowed to see play in tournaments. We have stuff like Pot of Greed from Yu-Gi-Oh!, which would just let you draw 2 cards for effectively free. Professor Oak in the Pokemon TCG would just let you shuffle your hand away and draw 7 new cards, also for free. And then of course in the MTG series we have Black Lotus, and we have the Moxen, which would basically give you mana, and those cards also pretty much cost 0. And why is that? Well, because at the end of the day, 0 mana cards are very unfun to play against, and when you're playing with 0 mana cards, sure, they might be interesting in that particular situation where you get to do multiple things, because, cheating in Hearthstone, and when I mean cheating, I mean doing crazy combo things, shouldn't be the norm, right? And when you do them, you feel very, very good for the first few times. But then at the end of the day, they're just not exciting for deck building, because you will always just include them. They're not exciting when you actually play the game, because, while it's an interesting turn and exciting, you don't really have a decision tree as with like other cards. And finally, it is very unfun for the opponent to play around these sort of cards, right? There's so many matches in Arena where I go like, okay, well the Druid only has 4 mana, so I'm gonna play around stuff that are 4 mana, right? So Swipe, Wrath and Hero Power, or maybe a 4-drop, and then they suddenly innovate something insane, and then you go like, well, I did not expect that, I did not play around that, and I'm basically dead. This also happens to be really bad in conjunction with a few cards, especially in Constructed, where Miracle Rogue would sometimes just win out of nowhere. Conceal is another card that I just thought of that was 0 mana before, and they had to nerf it. So how should we go forward with these 0 mana cards? If I were to work on Hearthstone and change some stuff, I would, number 1, remove all 0 mana cards, or change them in some way so that they don't cost 0 mana. And secondly, I were to design something that could cost 0, or has the potential to break the mana cost system, I would make it so that the minimum cost would be 1. A card that's really, really nice that follows that rule is Summoning Portal, right? This is a card that, kind of breaks the mana cost. 4 mana 0/4, reduce all your minions by 2, but there's a very important clause. It says not less than 1. You can argue that having the phrase of not less than 1 is a lot of clutter on a card, and it makes it not elegant, and it might be confusing to new players or whatever, because sometimes 2 minus 2 is not 1, right? But at the end of the day, I think it will make for a better gaming experience, because there's interaction in this card game, right? You can kind of predict what your opponent's going to play with their mana, and they're never going to go above and beyond what they're supposed to do, so that you can plan around them and feel smart when you outplay your opponent, which is the main point of playing card games in the first place, right? Finally, I want to end with a note that Blizzard actually said before in a blue post or like a designer post or anything. The reason they changed Charge, right? Back then Charge was for 0 mana, and in that case also Warsong Commander, was that they limited design space so much because they cannot make a cool 1-drop minion or a 2-drop minion that had a very, exciting effect when it can attack, because, Charge and Warsong Commander would actually break the game. I can't imagine a situation where Warsong Commander and Vicious Fledgling would be in the same format together, because that could be very disgusting, right? You could just win games out of nowhere. So that's my rant about 0 mana costs and why I hate them so much. I never ever want to see a 0 mana cost card in any expansion ever again. What do you think about 0 mana cost cards? Was I exaggerating a little bit too much, or do you guys agree with what I'm saying here? It's so frustrating to play against, but let me know, and I'll see you guys in the next Amaz Talks. Bye.